channel. So far we have learned how to make a web layout using HTML and CSS. In this video we will learn how to use JavaScript to make the app dynamic. Let's start with understanding what we can make dynamic in this app. So let's look at the menu in the left hand side. We have 4 menus in the left hand side: travel videos, tech videos, food videos, and sport videos. Let's see what happens when I try to reduce the height of the browser. So if I try to reduce the height of the browser, we can see the menu items are getting hidden. Also, if you look into the content panel, even that is some portion of the content panel is also getting hidden. And if I increase the size of the browser, the height, then we can see the full menu. Similarly, if I try to resize, again we can see the menu items are getting hidden. So basically what's happening is, as the browser size is getting resized or the resolution of the browser is changing, the app is not scaling itself as per the browser's size or the browser resolution. This is where we are going to introduce JavaScript to make the app dynamically scale to the resolution of browser. Alright, let's add JavaScript to our app now. So to add the JavaScript to our app, the first thing we will do is we'll create a folder called script. So we go to the root folder my app and click on this folder icon and name the folder as script. And then inside the script folder, we are going to add a new file called layout.js. Now this is where we are going to add the JavaScript code. So because we want to resize the window as per the browser resolution, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function and name it as resize window. We'll come back to the implementation of this function in a little bit, but first thing we will do is we'll go to layout.html and we need to add the reference of this JavaScript file in layout.html. So to add the reference, we will use the script tab. We'll put the language equals JavaScript, and then we will put the source equals script layout.js. So now that we have the reference of the JavaScript file in the HTML page, now we can start invoking the functions inside the layout.js JavaScript file from layout.html. Let's get back to the resize window function in layout.js. So to resize the window, or to resize the app as per the browser's resolution, what we need to know first is the browser's width and the height. So for that, what do we do first is we create a function get window width and another function get window height. So the job of these two functions will be to get the window width and the height as the browser size or the browser resolution changes. Let's implement the code for get window width function to get the width of the window. So I'm going to put in some code. Let's understand this code. So first, I'm declaring a variable called window width and initializing the value as 0. Now we have the window object in JavaScript. It's a predefined object in JavaScript. and it has a property called inner width, which basically gives the entire browser's width. Now what I'm checking is if type of the inner width is number. Now why I'm checking type of window.innerWidth equals to number. Now in most of the browsers, the value returned in inner width is number, but in Firefox it is not of type number, and that's why I just want to handle that situation where if the if this code is executing against Firefox browser, in that case, it may not work, but for other browsers, it will work. And that's why I'm handling this condition. If window.innerWidth equal to number, then I am straight away taking the inner width of the window and assigning it to the variable. Now, let's say if the browser doesn't support inner width property, right? In that case, what we are going to do is we are going to use the document object. Now, the document object gets the size of the entire content on the window. So the document object has an attribute called document element, and a document element has an attribute called client width. So I'm just making a defensive code over here, making sure the document element object exists and also the client width object exists inside document element, and then reading the client width and assigning it to the window width object. Now I'm handling another edge condition in case any browser doesn't support the document element property. In that case, we are going to get the client width from the body attribute. So again, we are going to document object and we are looking at the body, and then the body object also has the client width attribute. Now the difference between document element and document.body is that if we go to the layout.html, so if you see our HTML document or HTML page has the HTML tag. Now the HTML tag has two main sections, head and body. So when we refer the document object, right, and refer to the document element object, so basically it gives the size of the entire content from head to body. Now when we use the document.body object, then it gives the size of the entire body object. That's the difference. So basically our first approach is to see if the browser supports inner width property, and if it supports, we get the width of the browser directly from the window.innerWidth property. But if the browser doesn't support window.innerWidth property, then we go to the document object, and in that we try to get the height, or try to get the width of the entire HTML content. Now if we do not find the width of the HTML content, then we fall back to the body object. Okay, similar to get window width method, let's define the get window height method. Now what I'm going to do is I will copy everything from get window width method and paste it in get window height method. All we have to do here is rename the variable to window height, and wherever we find inner width, change that to inner height. So basically we are referring to the window object inner height property. Similarly here we will rename the variable, or we'll change the variable to window height, and then here instead of looking at the window inner width property, we will look at window inner height property. And then when coming to the document element client width, we will change it to document element client height property. And rename the variable also here window height, and change this from window width to client height and client height. And finally, we will return window height. So now that we have both get window width and get window height method defined, we want these two methods to be called from resize window. And this resize window we will call from the HTML, and we'll see how do we call it. So now let's define the variable window width equals get window width, and then let window height equals get window height. Now don't worry too much about what this let is. Let is another way of declaring variable. Difference between let and where is all about scoping that I can cover in another session. All right, so we have the resize window method defined now. Well, there is still some things to be done here, but we'll get back to this in a bit. Now let's understand from where we want to call this resize window method. So let's get back to the layout.html. Now we see the body tag here. Now body tag supports some events, and these events are triggered the moment the body tag is rendered on the browser, right? So what we want to do is we want to resize the app, or we want to scale the app dynamically, or scale the resolution of the app dynamically as the window resizes. So what we are going to do is, first, the body attribute, in the HTML document, the body attribute has an event called onload. So we want to call this resize window method from the onload event. So what we are going to do is we are going to copy this method name here, and then we are going to associate this method with this event. What this means is, when the HTML page loads, the body renders, or the body is loaded on the body of the HTML page is loaded on the browser, that time this resize window method will be called. And how the browser will find this resize window? It will find it because when it renders the HTML document on the browser, it looks for the reference, it looks for the script reference. So here we have script language JavaScript source equal to layout.js. So basically the HTML document is going to go to the script tag. It will find that there is a script file called layout.js is referenced over here, and it will load the JavaScript file along with the HTML object. And then because this layout.js script file is loaded, because it is referenced, it will find the resize window method inside layout.js. So that's how, on the onload event, resize window method will be found and invoked. There is another event called onResize. So we want to call the resize window method also from the onResize event of the body attribute. Now the reason why we want to call from both onload event and onResize event is this. So let's say when we run this application and the browser is already in the minimize state. So in that case, the onload method, the onload event will call the resize window, and the resize window will calculate the screen resolution, and accordingly it will scale the application as per the browser resolution or the screen resolution. Now we still haven't done the coding part, that's why you cannot see the application scaling to the browser resolution, but we will see when everything is plugged in. We will see when the window is by default in minimize resolution, the onload event will call resize window and the app will scale to the screen resolution. And then on resize, so when we change the resolution of the browser, so let's say when I'm dragging it to increase or decrease, at that time the on resize event will be triggered, and every time the browser is resized, the resize window method is going to called, and the resize window method is going to adjust the app resolution as per the browser resolution. Now let's get back to the resize window method. So in the resize window method, so far what we have done is we have got the browser window width and the browser window height. Now what we need to do is we need to adjust the height and width of the nav panel here and the content panel here as per the browser width and height. So for that, the first thing we need to do is we need to get access to the nav panel object, and similarly we need to get access to the content panel object. How do we get that? So let's go to the layout.html page, and this is our navigation panel. And what we have done is the navigation panel is a div element, and we have a ID property associated with the div element, which is nothing but the navigation panel, and the ID is dv navigation. Similarly, if we have assigned the ID for the submenus in the navigation panel and the main menus in the navigation panel, right? And next we also have the content panel, and we have, which is a div element again, and we have the ID property created for the content panel, which is content. So now that we have the ID property defined for the navigation and the content panel, let's see how we can access this navigation object or navigation div element and this content div element through JavaScript. Access any object in the HTML document, or to access any HTML element in the HTML document, JavaScripts provide a method. So we go to the document object in JavaScript, and it provides a method called getElementById. It also, so there are different ways we can access the HTML element or HTML object in the HTML document. So the common way is getElementById. So basically we have users, so we define the ID of the HTML elements, and this method getElementById takes the element ID as input, right? There are other ways as well. So document.getElementByName. So instead of ID attribute, we can also assign HTML element with name attribute, and we can access the HTML element by its names. And we can also access the HTML elements by tag name. So in this case, let's say if we say get elements by tag name div, it will give all the divs as defined in the HTML document. For example, we will access the HTML element by using document.getElementById method, and the reason for that is we have defined the ID attribute for all the HTML element. Let me paste some code over here. So what I'm doing here is I'm accessing the content, navigation, content frame, and the submenus elements that we have defined in the HTML in layout.html, and accessing these elements in the resize window method using JavaScript. And what I'm doing is I'm setting the height and the width property of these elements as per the window height of the browser we are getting, and I am subtracting 110 pixels out of it. Why I am subtracting 110 pixel, I will explain that later. And similarly, getting the window width method, window width of the browser, and subtracting, making some adjustments by subtracting some pixels out of it. Okay, and we have added this code. Let's see how does the app scales as per the browser resolution. So let's go back to the app, refresh, and let's try to resize the browser. Okay, so if we resize, we can see the nav panel and the content panel is not adjusting to the browser resolution. Let's figure out what's wrong. Why it's not resizing. I think the obvious reason is the resize method is not getting called. And let's confirm that by going to DevTools. And if I go to console, so we can see the resize window is not defined. So basically it is not able to identify the resize window. It's not able to find it. And that's why the function is not invoked. And the app is not scaling to the browser resolution. So I don't see anything wrong over here. So it should be something wrong in where we are calling the resize window method. So I do not see anything going wrong over here. Earthing. I think I know I figured out. So if you see here, the reference we are making to the JavaScript file, the layout.javascript file, there is something wrong over here. So the script tag, the language equals, I think I misspelled JavaScript here. So it should be JavaScript. So let's fix this. And now let's go back to the app, refresh, and let's see what happens. Okay, now we can see the app is scaling to the browser resolution. We can see the menus are fitting in properly. The content panel is also fitting in properly. And as we resize, we can see that the app is scaling well to the browser resolution. All right, with this, we have seen how to add JavaScript to make the app dynamic. And so far in this session, what we have learned is we have learned how to scale the menus and the content panel, the nav panel and the menus in the nav panel, and the content panel as per the browser resolution. In the next session, what we will do is we will make the menus here dynamic. These menus are static over here. So if you see in the HTML page, we have defined the menus here. Now, ideal scenario, what should happen is these menus should be somewhere in some configuration file, and the menu should load dynamically from the configuration file. And the benefit of that would be that if we need to add or remove menus, all we need to do is just modify the configuration file and the menus will appear or remove or change dynamically as per the configuration. Thank you for watching this session.